Hey, what is up, everybody? I'm here to give you guys my Flashback Friday Review Season 1 episode. I'm just checking Episode 4. This is Episode 4. And in this video, I will be reviewing WWF Monday Night Raw from October 13th, 1997. And, obviously, I'm going to try to set the time frame for this video. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, because I'm not exactly sure, because I really wasn't watching around this time. I looked up like the dates between pay-per-views and stuff, and WWF In Your House Bad Blood had just happened, and it was building the Survivor Series 1997. And everybody knows what famous moment took place at Survivor Series 97. We just literally had the anniversary for it yesterday, I think. So it was a pretty important time for the WWF around this time. And I'll talk about that more as I go into this video, but I'm kind of aware of somewhat the time frame for this time period. Like I talked about before, I actually kind of enjoy going back and rewatching some WWF in '97 because you could. I haven't mentioned this yet, but you could see, because the WWF, like I talked about before, was in a bad state around this time. It was around from '93, like I would say maybe even like late '93 to like '96. The WWF really wasn't in a good state. I wouldn't say maybe as much '93, maybe '95 to '97. But in '97, they were starting to get things right because the WWF was really out of touch around this time. They were doing a lot of hokey characters that they would have done in the '80s that would have gotten over, but it really wasn't working anymore because the times had changed. So, yeah, the WWF you could slowly start to see change with the times, and it was slowly going towards the Attitude Era. And 1997 was the big step around that. So now that I've kind of like introduced this episode, I'm gonna go ahead and watch the show. And as I watch it after each promo segment, match, or whatever, I'll come on here and talk about it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let's get right into it. Okay, so we had a video package for the Legion of Doom, and they talk about everything that they've done together as a tag team, how they've grown up together, and they've done everything together as a successful, how they've been former AWA, NWA, and how they won the tag team titles back at, I believe, SummerSlam 1992. And this was a build-up because they're fighting tonight. I don't know who they're wrestling for the WWF Tag Team Championships, and if they lose, they have to retire. So I thought this was a nice way to build to that match. I believe they're wrestling the Godwins, and the Godwins and the Legion of Doom have a history. Obviously, they've wrestled. I believe the Godwins beat them. No, the Legion of Doom beat the Godwins at WWF In Your House one night only, and the Legion of Doom ended up injuring Henry O. Godwin. So this was a way to get revenge on them. The Godwins also had just won the WWF Tag Team Championships at In Your House Bad Blood 1997. So I actually kind of think this is a decent build-up. So overall, good stuff. Okay, Raw starts off, and we had Pyro. I always mention that now because we don't have Pyro anymore in the WWF, so I like to mention that. And we had the commentary team of Jerry the King Lawler and Jim Ross, and probably Vince McMahon, but he wasn't actually out there because he was in the ring conducting an interview. And obviously where they are now is Jerry the King Lawler is pretty much a part-time commentator. The last time we saw him, he was the heel commentator at this time, and then eventually in 2007 he turned face. Then he pretty much, has commentated for Raw and the pay-per-views, then he eventually got kicked off and went and did SmackDown. Then he did the panel for the pre-shows, and then Raw and SmackDown pre-shows, and now he's just a part-time commentator. The last time he commentated was on Raw about a couple of months ago now. And Jim Ross was the play-by-play guy for years, on and off, and now he does part-time appearances. The last show he commentated for that I saw, anyways, was at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 3, and Vince McMahon around this time, it was becoming known that he was somehow an authority figure, but we didn't know he actually owned the WWF, and now he's pretty much the owner. We pretty much know that now, so that's your history. But to start off, Vince McMahon interviews the Hart Foundation, mainly just Bret Hart, and he talks about how the British Bulldog isn't there because he's celebrating an anniversary on his birthday. So Vince McMahon asks him how he feels about what happened last week with his loss to Hunter Hearst-Helmsley. And before he can say anything, Shawn Michaels, Hunter Hearst-Helmsley, Chyna, and Ravish and Rick Rude come up on the Titantron, and they pretty much talk about, how they're going to save all the fans the trouble by not boring them because they're just going to get bored to death by Bret Hart talking on the mic, which I thought was funny because because that always happens. And Shawn Michaels talks about how Bret Hart was embarrassed last week, and he says that he always knows, and he says that he knows a lot of things about Canada. And he actually shows footage of Shawn Michaels sticking the Canadian flag right up his nose, which I thought was funny. And Hunter Hearst-Helmsley, and this is actually around the time when they were finally starting to realize that they can call him Triple H, because he actually said Triple H, Hunter Hearst-Helmsley. So it seems like that WWF was starting to realize that we don't. Wait a minute. All of his names begin with 3 H's. Let's just call him Triple H. But they hadn't fully figured that out yet. And he shows the same footage from the match last week of him defeating Bret Hart when he lost to him by counter thanks to interference by Shawn Michaels. And they make fun of him for that. And Bret Hart then challenges Shawn Michaels or Hunter Hearst-Helmsley to come out in the ring and fight him. Shawn Michaels refuses. Talks about how last time he was out there, last time he beat Bret Hart was at WrestleMania 12 when he took the WWF, when he took that meaningless piece of metal from him. Actually, is what he says, because Bret Hart was the WWF champion at this time, and Hunter Hearst-Helmsley acts like he's going to get up and fight him. He talks all tough, but he says, "I don't need to do that because I already did it last week." So Bret Hart then says Shawn Michaels, Hunter Hearst-Helmsley aren't going to make it to Survivor Series, and then Michaels and Helmsley get the shocked look on their faces, and then they talk about how they're degenerate, and people always constantly call them degeneration. So then they say, "We're Degeneration X, and you make the rules, and we will break them." And obviously, this is pretty much how Degeneration X finally got their name. It was right on this episode of Raw right here, so that makes this a pretty famous episode of Raw. And yeah, pretty much Shawn Michaels does say that they are going to cross paths before Survivor Series, and then that was pretty much the entire segment. I thought this was really good. I thought Degeneration X came off great here. I thought Bret Hart came off good, and I thought this was an awesome way to build up to the match at Survivor Series 97. And now we're about to have a match between Owen Hart and Kama Mustafa. So I'm just going to watch that match now, and then I'll review it when I come back on here. Okay, so we had the first match on the show, and it was Owen Hart with Bret the Hitman Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart ringside versus Kama Mustafa with Rocky Maivia, Farouk and somebody else. D'Lo Brown, I think. Yeah, but it was pretty much Owen Hart versus Kama Mustafa. They kind of had it. Oh no, it was Farouk actually. Farouk, my bad. I think D'Lo Brown may have been out there. But pretty much, this was kind of coming off the reason of In Your House Bad Blood when Owen Hart defeated Farouk to become the brand new Intercontinental Champion after it had been vacated for a while. And they were kind of teasing a Farouk-Owen Hart feud. And before the match starts, though, Degeneration X come out. And I didn't mention this, but at the time, this was at a time where Shawn Michaels was the current European champion. And they come out and pretty much invade the match. Shawn Michaels and Hunter Hearst-Helmsley take Vince McMahon and Jim Ross's headsets, and they commentate the match, pretty much putting down Owen Hart and stuff. I thought it was very funny, actually. They mentioned stuff how Bret Hart probably put Owen Hart to sleep for talking. They talk about, how he had learned all this stuff from first generation wrestler, but the first generation wrestler really wasn't any good. How the Hart family has a ton of secrets, and one of the secrets is that there isn't any secrets. And during the match, Hunter Hearst-Helmsley eats a banana, and Jerry the King Lawler tries to chime in and tries to be buddy with these guys, and Shawn Michaels talks about how he's just a puppet to him. And Chyna slaps Jerry the King Lawler in the back of the head, and she takes off his commentary set and gives it to Ravishing Rick Rude. And then the match itself, though, consisted of spots like Owen Hart hitting the drop kick off the top turnbuckle, a nice heel kick. Kama Mustafa hit a body slam, an elbow drop, stuff like that. But the main focus was on D-Generation X, and eventually Bret Hart comes over to attack Shawn Michaels, but then the Nation of Domination and the Hart Foundation get into a brawl, and D-Generation X is just making fun of him. Shawn Michaels puts on Farouk's little hat that he has on from the Nation of Domination, and pretty much the Nation of Domination beats down the Hart Foundation. Then the match ends. We don't exactly see who wins the match, but the match ends. And afterwards, Bret Hart and Owen Hart go in the win, and Bret Hart waits for Shawn Michaels, but he never shows up again. Overall, I thought this was really good. I thought this was a nice way to build up to the title match at Survivor Series, and I really enjoyed it. Because obviously at the time, we knew that Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart had really hated each other, so I thought it was kind of cool that they did this. And the match itself probably just gets 2 stars, but this was more of a segment really than just a match, so didn't really need. This did what it needed to do. And as for where they are now, Farouk, eventually the Nation of Domination eventually broke up. Rocky Maivia became The Rock, and he became a huge star in wrestling. He was like one of the main guys in the Attitude Era, and now he's a huge star in Hollywood. Farouk went into a tag team, then eventually he became Ron Simmons again, and now he's in the Hall of Fame. Kama Mustafa eventually became the Godfather. And that's pretty much, and he's, he was the good father, and stuff like that. Bret Hart, I'll get to him later because we're going to probably see him again on the show. We'll probably see the whole Hart Foundation, but pretty much the Nation of Domination lasted about another year or so, and then broke up, and then The Rock became The Rock, and I've already kind of mentioned that, but overall, I thought this was a really good stuff here. Okay, so next we had another video package for the Legion of Doom, and they pretty much talk about what Paul Ellman has meant to their career. They talk about how, he was the brains of their operation, and pretty much that they wouldn't be anything without Paul Ellman. And overall, I thought I like this. I like how they're kind of building up the Legion of Doom to possibly win those WWF Tag Team Championships. And obviously, Paul Ellman is now a manager in NXT. So yeah, that's pretty much what he is. Okay, so next up, the Godwins get interviewed, and they say that they used to watch the Legion of Doom when they were kids, and that their time was then, and the Godwins' time is now. And they say that they're going to get rid of the Legion of Doom and get them out of the WWF. Fine promo, nice way to build up to the match later on the night. Okay, so we had the next match. It was a mini match. Max Mini and Nova versus Mosaic and Tarantula. And I don't know why the WWF. I mean, it seemed like a decent idea to put in the minis and kind of show little people wrestling. But I don't think the WWF really knew what to do with these people, so they just kind of threw them out there in matches. They were fun matches. This was actually a pretty fun match. I thought it was fun. Pretty much a lot of dives in this match. Once dive that was cool but looked bad was Nova hit a suicide dive on the outside, and he ended up hitting his head on the metal. So on the the metal ramp, it looked pretty bad. But eventually, Max Mini rolls up. I think Triantula for the win. And yeah, that was the end of the match. I did like Jerry the King Lawler's comment where he said that because he just makes fun of it, where he said that Max Mini got like that Nova got a little headache, so I thought that was funny. But obviously, with all these guys now, Max Mini is still doing indies. Nova, I think, is retired. Mosaic is now Octagon Ciento. He's still wrestling, and Triantula unfortunately was murdered. So it's kind of sad to think that Triantula is dead now. And Nova recently was in WWE. He was in there in 2005, 2006. Because after they scrapped this, everybody was pretty much gone. So Nova recently returned. But yeah, overall, this was a decent match. I will give it 2.5 stars. Okay, so next we were supposed to have a match between Flash Funk and Shawn Michaels. No reason behind it. It was just a match. They had brought Flash Funk in from ECW. He was too cool. He was too cold, Scorpio. And he was a great mid-card wrestler there, and then the WWF brings him in and brings him and makes him Flash Funk. I guess to send a message, you don't make your name into any other company. It was stupid. Too cold, Scorpio. They just make Flash Funk. Dumb. But before the match happens, Kane comes out. Now, this was when Kane had just come to the WWF. He had aligned himself with Paul Bearer. He took out The Undertaker at In Your House Bad Blood in the first ever Hell in a Cell match. We know the famous moment with Kane. And Flash Funk tries to fight back, but Kane lays him out with a one-handed chokeslam and then a tombstone. And Paul Bearer gets on the mic and says that they're going to lay waste to everybody in the WWF until Undertaker accepts Kane's challenge for a match. And he says that Undertaker will not rest in peace, because the whole story was that the Undertaker had set his house on fire and left Kane in it and killed his parents and left emotional scars on Kane. I love that storyline. And I love the storyline they were slowly trying to tell with Undertaker versus Kane. Obviously, this led to the eventually, this would lead to the WrestleMania match. They slow burned it for months. And eventually, Undertaker would go on to defeat Kane, and then he would beat him in the Inferno match. And then they would pretty much have a feud for almost the entirety of their careers, pretty much. You know, they feuded in 2000, and where Undertaker unmasked Kane at SummerSlam. They teamed up together and won the WCW Tag Team Championships at SummerSlam 2001. And then Kane buried The Undertaker at Survivor Series 2003, to which Undertaker came back at WrestleMania 20 with Paul Bearer and defeated Kane. And then eventually they teamed together on and off. Eventually then Kane, when he won the World Heavyweight Championship, this was at the point where Kane had unmasked. And, then they refeuded because Kane put Undertaker in a vegetative state. Kane defeated The Undertaker 3 straight times at Night of Champions in 2010 in a No Holds Barred match, at Hell in a Cell, in a Hell in a Cell match, when Paul Bearer came back and betrayed The Undertaker and aligned himself with Kane, and then at Bragging Rights in a Buried Alive match where Kane defeated The Undertaker. And then they have had brief reunions. They had a recent reunion on the 1000th episode of Monday Night Raw. They had a recent reunion at Survivor Series in 2015. And they also had a reunion on SmackDown last year. So, and Kane's still in the company today. He just recently returned, and he's on a huge monster push right now. He's also running to be the governor of Knoxville, I think. I don't remember. And Paul Bearer, obviously, unfortunately, is dead. But then after all this, though, after Kane had beaten the shit out of Flash Funk, Shawn Michaels, D-Generation X runs out, and Shawn Michaels makes the pin, and Hunter Hearst-Helmsley pretends to be the referee and counts, and Chyna pretends to be the timekeeper, And Ravishing Rick Rude pretends to be the ring announcer and announces Shawn Michaels as the winner, says all this catchphrase, the showstopper. At first he says the pecan, and he's like, oh, I misread it, the icon. And I thought that was great. I love this. This was a really good segment. And we're going to see D-Generation X later on in the night, so I'm not going to really say where they are. But Flash Funk, I believe, is doing indies because I saw him work a indie show recently, about 3 years ago. So that's where Flash Funk is. He wrestled, I think, Sabu. But that's where Flash Funk is. I think he's doing indies. But overall, I really enjoyed this. I thought this made Shawn Michaels look like a hero. It made Kane look like a monster, so I loved it. Okay, so we had another video package for the Legion of Doom, and they talk about the fans and how the fans are the best thing about wrestling. And they talk about that moment where the fans erupted when they won the WWF Tag Team Championships. And I actually had misinformation. It's not SummerSlam 92, it was SummerSlam 1991, so my bad. And they talk about what it was like for the fans to erupt. I thought it was very good. I like how they're showing these video packages. They kind of show a prelude like the Legion of Doom could possibly retire if they lose tonight. So I like it. All right. So next we had a match. It was 8-Ball and Skull with Crush and the other guy from DOA. I don't even remember his name. Versus Sniper and the Jackal with Recon and Cohen the Interrogator and the Combat and whatever. It was a faction called the Truth Commission. They were feuding with the DOA. I don't know why. They didn't say. And this faction looks like it sucked. I'm just getting first eyes on it. This is the first I've heard of this faction. And it looks like awful. And I don't get why the WWF was thinking of putting this faction together. I'm not a huge fan of DOA either. This was like I said, this was because the WWF I think was trying to outdo the NWO faction, so they just made as much factions as possible. You had the Nation of Domination, you had the Hart Foundation, you had D-Generation X, you had this faction, you had DOA. They were trying everything. Eventually, D-Generation X and the Nation of Domination were the only ones that really worked. Hart Foundation did work, but D-Generation X and the Nation of Dominations were really the only ones that were able to compete with the NWO from WCW. But this match, I didn't really. It was alright, I guess. Nothing special. The manager pulls Skull over the top rope, so DOA and everybody gets into a brawl and it breaks into chaos. It was whatever. DOA obviously broke up, but like about a year later, and this group just fell apart right away. It really didn't. I mean, it only lasted like '99. Obviously, one of them now it became Bull Buchanan, and he would go on to have the short runs with WWF, and yeah, it's really. Everybody else, Sniper left. The Interrogator left, and Tank left shortly afterwards. So whatever. It was not that good. So I'll give it like a star and 3/4. It wasn't that good. Okay, so next we have the contract sign-in for Stone Cold Steve Austin. And this was pretty much to set up an Intercontinental Championship match with Owen Hart at Survivor Series 1997. Because the reason for this match was because at SummerSlam 1997, Owen Hart had broken Stone Cold's neck. I've talked about this before. He laid him on with a pile driver, and Stone Cold pretty much was paralyzed from the neck down. So, he got his neck broken. So, it was pretty much up in the air if he would ever be back with the company again. So they built that up for a while. And Stone Cold Steve Austin, we weren't sure was ever going to wrestle again. He had been trying to get cleared for months and months and months, but the WWF wouldn't clear him. And eventually the WWF caved and gave him a contract to wrestle Owen Hart for the title, And Vince McMahon presents him the contract, and when Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon came out, you just saw like they instantly had chemistry with each other. I don't think they knew it yet, but you could see that there was just something there that was going to become that was going to come for years to come. Like they had instant chemistry with each other. But yeah, Stone Cold Steve Austin doesn't want to sign the contract because he doesn't trust Vince McMahon. He wants him to sign it first. So Vince McMahon signs it. Then Stone Cold says, "Thank you," and Vince says that the match isn't official until you sign the contract. So Stone Cold signs the contract, and then Stone Cold says, "Now there's only one more thing to do," and he teases like he's going to give Vince McMahon the stunner. And Vince is like, "Don't go messing up." And Stone Cold's like, "Don't go messing up your pants. All I want is a handshake." So they shake hands. Stone Cold acts like he's going to stun him. And he even says, "I could have just laid you out right there." And then Vince McMahon asks him why he screwed Farouk at In Your House Bad Blood out of the Intercontinental Championship. And Stone Cold says he did that because he wants Owen Hart, because he's the one that broke his neck, which makes sense. And he says that Farouk was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He says he doesn't have a problem with Farouk. Then the Nation of Domination come out. Farouk says that pretty much he goes on this long spiel about how usually when you cross the train tracks, you make a sacrifice. And Stone Cold Steve Austin sacrificed himself when he screwed Farouk out of the Intercontinental Championship. And Stone Cold pretty much says, "I have no clue what you're talking about, but it sounds like I pissed you off, so why don't you or any one of yous come down and try to kick my ass." So Rocky Maivia tries to go down and beat up Stone Cold, but he gets laid out with the stunner. Stone Cold takes off to the crowd, and the Nation of Domination when they win pissed. And you can instantly see that it was kind of cool to see Rocky Maivia go down because these were two future stars of the company, like I talked about with Rocky Maivia. But Stone Cold Steve Austin, pretty much the aftermath for him was he would go on at Survivor Series. I believe he won the Intercontinental Championship from Owen Hart. And they were pretty much, Stone Cold Steve Austin pretty much was becoming a huge star. He was immensely over, and he pretty much became a huge star. He won the Royal Rumble. He won the WWF Championship from Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 14, and he became pretty much the face of the Attitude Era. He was pretty much the face of the Attitude Era. You can make and then obviously because the Vince McMahon heel turn, him and Vince feuded forever. And obviously, The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin would have classic matches and a classic feuds over the WWF Championship. So, overall, everybody benefited from this match. And I thought this was a really good segment. I loved it. I thought it was a great way to build a Survivor Series. It was building up, obviously, to Stone Cold Steve Austin, Nation of Domination feud. And I thought this was great. I loved it. Awesome. Okay, so next, the Legion of Doom talk about what it's like to compete in Wembley Stadium. Because they talk about normally they would come out with motorcycles and that would define them as Legion of Doom. But when they came out in Wembley Stadium, nobody could hear the motorcycles. All they heard was the fans. And I loved it. You know, they talk about what it was like to compete, that atmosphere in the building and stuff. So, like I said, I'm liking these little LOD promos or video packages. Okay, so we had another video package for the Legion of Doom, and pretty much they talk about how they got their look. They talk about how they came up with it themselves and they worked on it bit by bit. And they said that they had their names Animal and Hawk ever since they were a kid. So it just stuck with them. Like I said, another enjoyable video package. Okay, so next we had an interview with the Legion of Doom, and Animal talks about how they want to test themselves to see if they still have what it takes to be in the WWF. They want to prove that they can still be WWF Tag Team Champions. And they talk about how they've had opportunities before to become champions, but they've let outside interference get in the way, which has never happened before. So they want to prove that they still have what it takes to hang with the Young Guns. And Hawk says that, and if we can't, then we're done. Very good interview. I really enjoyed it. Nice way to build up to the WWF Tag Team Championship match. Alright, so we had the next match. It was Tajiri versus Brian Christopher. And this was when the WWF was trying to get this light heavyweight division started. And, you know, they were kind of showcasing their talent. They were start in this light heavyweight division in competition to the WCW's cruiserweight division. And this was a good match. I enjoyed this match. This is what the light heavyweight division should be. You just go out there and you have good matches, and it's good. It was kind of weird to see Tajiri without him doing the green mist and stuff. And this was obviously, I think, before Tajiri went to ECW or anything like that. Brian Christopher, obviously, they were playing the gimmick that he was Jerry the King Lawler's son, which he really was. And this was a good match here. Tajiri hits a ton of kicks on Brian Christopher. He hits a missile drop kick to Christopher. Brian Christopher then hits a full Nelson and drives him face first down on the floor. And he dominates the matchup for a while. Tajiri makes his comeback. He hits a backflip elbow to Brian Christopher. Brian Christopher hits a clothesline. Tajiri hits a kick to the head. And he hits a senton into a moonsault splash. And then eventually Tajiri, they both exchange roll-ups and they keep kicking out. Then eventually Brian Christopher hits a rolls up Tajiri and holds the tights for the win. And Jerry the King Lawler was happy about it. Tajiri then it kicks Brian Christopher in the head and it sends him out of the ring. And overall, I thought this was a good match here. 3 stars. Obviously, with where they are now, Tajiri is a huge legend now in the WWE. Well, he's not a huge legend, but he's a veteran in the WWE, in the wrestling business now. He's been pretty much everywhere. He went to ECW. He made his name in the ECW. He made his name in the WWF. And he just recently competed in the Cruiserweight Classics. But then because of his injuries and stuff, he's competing in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And Brian Christopher obviously eventually became known as Grandmaster Sexy, which was his nickname, and competed in the tag team division, and that's pretty much what he's known as. The last time you saw him was NXT Arrival, actually, was the last time you saw him. But overall, I thought this was a good match, and yeah, it was good. Okay, so next, they do a segment called Jim Cornette's Opinion, and he goes off and Phil Mushnick, because Phil Mushnick was a guy who wrote for the New York Post who pretty much trashed professional wrestling. He trashed every post of it. He trashed, and Jim Cornette goes off on him. He talks about how he's trying to take away people's constitutional rights. He was somebody that trashed wrestling fans. He said that they should cancel wrestling in the Madison Square Garden. He talks about how they should, how when Ted Turner donated $1 million to a charity, he says that it would be better off to just close down wrestling altogether. And Jim Cornette says he's just speaking out about this now because he used Brian Pillman's death to talk about it. He talks about Brian Pillman was a good friend of his, and he says that if you're going to talk bad about him, then the world will be better off without you. And this was very good. Jim Cornette, it was the typical Jim Cornette thing, and it's kind of funny how now Jim Cornette makes these podcasts where he rants about stuff, and I guess he got his practice with these segments right here. Jim Cornette obviously is a very controversial character in wrestling now because of his shoot promos and stuff, and he's awesome. Jim Cornette's awesome, so I love this segment. It was great. Okay, so next match was Goldust with Marlinus versus Savio Vega with the rest of Los Pericos, which consisted of Miguel Perez, Rose Estrada Jr., and Jesus Castillo. And the Barriquas get involved. They pull Goldust's leg down, and the ref kicks him out, so Savio Vega hits a heel kick on him. He dominates Goldust the rest of the matchup. Goldust makes a comeback, and then eventually Savio Vega catches him again, and he goes and talks crap to Marlinus. Goldust tries to attack him. He gets caught with a heel kick. Then Goldust hits a clothesline on him. He goes for the final curtain. Savio Vega counters into a heel kick. And he tries to pin Goldust with his feet on the ropes. He gets caught. Goldust tries to beat him with a roll-up, gets caught. And then eventually Molina throws a cigar into the wind, and Goldust hits Savio Vega with her purse and gets the win. I liked the match. It was decent. 2 1/4. There really was no reason behind this match. It was just a match. This was Goldust in the first match back with Martinez. So, yeah. The aftermath is Goldust is still wrestling. He's had on and off appearances in the WWF. Um, and he's still wrestling to this day, and he still looks great. So that's impressive. Savio Vega, Los Barricas shortly disbanded, and they've had reunions and indie shows and stuff. And Savio Vega is currently working indie shows. Everybody else, I believe, is doing the same thing. But overall, decent match. Okay, so next, we were supposed to have a match between Hunter Hearst-Helmsley and the Patriot. But before the match starts, Ravishing Rick Rude pops up behind the Patriot while he's making his entrance, throws coffee at his face, hits him with the briefcase, and they just fight backstage. We don't see anything else happen. So, Shawn Michaels grabs the mic all cocky because Shawn Michaels and China were out there ringside. And they say, after another hard-fought victory, your winner, Triple H, Hunter Hearst-Helmsley. And, Hunter Hearst-Helmsley talks about how this was a huge fought victory. And then the commissioner, Sergeant Slaughter, comes out. And Sergeant Slaughter says that he's sick and tired of D-Generation X constantly showing disrespect towards everybody in the WWF. So he says that Hunter Hearst-Helmsley is going to wrestle tonight, and DX are being really rude to him. Helmsley is using Shawn Michaels to flash him. Shawn Michaels even tells him to suck it, and Hunter Hearst-Helmsley mocks Sergeant Slaughter by doing the salute. And it was just really, really funny. And Hunter Hearst-Helmsley's new opponent comes out. He was supposed to be Ahmed Johnson, but he gets attacked by the Nation of Domination, which makes sense because Ahmed Johnson was kicked out of the Nation of Domination. So D-Generation X take off. They watch it from the stage, and they take out popcorn and soda and stop watching it. And then Ken Shamrock and the Legion of Doom come out and make the save. And afterwards, D-Generation X spray the soda and throw the popcorn and leave. And Animal gets on the mic and says that they got something else more to prove tonight. So he tells the Godwins to get their ass down there so they can win the WWF Tag Team Championships. And then that was it. I thought this was really good. It was a great way to end. I thought it was a great segment. I thought it made D-Generation X look like absolute heels, and I loved it. And obviously, we knew this led to Shawn Michaels versus Bret the Hitman Hart in the Montreal Screwjob, which I'm saving that. I'm not going to talk about whether or not that was work, and it led to D-Generation X becoming one of the greatest groups in WWE. Shawn Michaels won the title. He would lose it to Stone Cold at WrestleMania, and unfortunately had to take 4 years off because of his back injury. And then Hunter Hearst-Helmsley, who they finally figured out to shorten his name to Triple H, and he went on to control DX. And Shawn Michaels then came back. They were going to tease a DX reunion, but Triple H turned on him, and they had that great feud. And DX has had 2 reunions. They reunited in 2006 until 2007 when Triple H tore his quad for a second time, and then they reunited in 2009. But Triple H has gone on to win countless world championships, and now he's the COO of the WWE. Shawn Michaels just recently retired at WrestleMania 26. Well, actually, I guess that was 7 years ago now. Wow, I can't believe it's been 7 years since Shawn Michaels has wrestled. China, unfortunately, has passed away. Obviously, her and Triple H had a falling out. Ravishing Rick Rude, unfortunately, is dead as well. And I already said what happened with the Nation of Domination. Ken Shamrock went on to go into a feud with Rocket Maivia for the Intercontinental Championship. And obviously, he eventually shortly left around 1999. Ironically enough, when The Rock became the corporate champion. So, then eventually, and obviously that's everybody. I guess that covers everybody. So overall, I thought this was a really good segment. It made D-Generation X look like awesome heels, and I loved it. I loved this segment. Okay, so then we had the main event. It was a title versus career match. The Godwin's Tag Team Championships versus the Legion of Doom's career. Overall, I thought this was a really good match. LOD started off really well. They dominate the Godwins, and they destroy him in the beginning of the matchup. Then Hawk gets dominated. The Godwins get the heat on him for a long time. They hit body slams on him, and Hawk thinks he makes the tag, and he actually does make the tag to Animal, but the ref doesn't see it. And when the referee is dealing with the action in the ring, Uncle Cletus was ringside, and one of the Godwins, I don't know which one it was, throws Animal into the steps. So referees come out and check on Animal, and the Godwins just beat the crap out of Hawk, and eventually one of them lays out Earl Hebner, who was refereeing the match, with a slop drop, and the Godwins continue to beat down Hawk. So Animal, because of their careers on the line, rushes down to the ring, starts taking out the Godwins. The Legion of Doom go for the Doomsday device, but Uncle Cletus shoves Hawk off the top turnbuckle, and he goes to hit Animal with the horseshoe. He accidentally hits one of the Godwins, and the other Godwin goes for a power bomb, but Hawk hits a flying clothesline, covers him, gets the win. So the Legion of Doom become the new WWF Tag Team Champions, and afterwards, Godwins beat the crap out of Uncle Cletus, and so bad that his nose gets busted open. I like this. I like the match. I thought this match was really good. I'll give it 3.25 stars. And yeah, it was a really good match. And obviously now too, the Legion of Doom, would go on to lose the tag team titles a few months later, and then eventually they departed from the company. Hawk ended up passing away in 2003, but they've still had different variations of the Legion of Doom. And then eventually, as for the Godwins, they were shortly out of the company because the WWF was fading away from those hokey gimmicks. So that was good. So overall, both teams benefited from this, I'd say. So overall, I actually thought this was a really good show to go back and watch. I really enjoyed it. I liked Kane coming out and just destroying Fast Flunk. I thought that was good. I thought D-Generation X was good on this whole show. I thought they were just the perfect heels, and I also liked the WWF Tag Team Title match. I even liked the Light Heavyweight Championship match. But I think the most important takeaway you can get from this show is you could totally see that the WWF was starting to change. You could see that the WWF was starting to change with the times, and they were slowly but surely starting to regain some momentum and starting to become the top wrestling company in the world again, because WCW was kicking their asses in the ratings because of the NWO. ECW was doing hardcore stuff. So you could see that the WWF were becoming the top dogs again in professional wrestling. And this was an example of it. And obviously, they were slowly starting to enter the Attitude Era. And obviously, I forgot to talk about it, but I also really enjoyed the contract signing with Stone Cold Steve Austin. And you could see the things that they were setting up, even though maybe they didn't know they were setting up this stuff. Obviously, we knew the Montreal Screwjob was coming. Even if you watched the show, that was a huge moment. You could see the rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin and that feud coming up with him and Vince McMahon. You see Undertaker and Kane being set up. You can see what else? Like I said, the setup of the Vince McMahon character, the setup of, even though we know it wasn't to be yet, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock. Like, you got a ton of future stars on this show. You got the you even have them slowly starting to figure stuff out and getting away from that hokey 95, 96 era of WWF. So that was good, obviously. And I think I think this is still a really good show to go back and watch. If I had to rate this show, I would rate it probably a 7.5 out of 10. I thought it was really good. But that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you guys for watching this video. Please make sure you guys like, comment, and share this video so people will watch it. Make sure you guys subscribe to this channel for more content, and click on the bell so that way every time you upload a video, you guys will get a notification for it. Make sure you guys do the same thing for my CM Brothers and Owen the Talkinator YouTube channels. And that's pretty much it, guys. Talk to you later.